Yeah.
Welcome back to the Gridiron Expert, bringing you some of the best college football news, predictions, and analysis. Make sure to like this video. Go follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Expert. Check out our official website, thegridironexpert.com, where you can sign up for our weekly newsletter and also sign up for our expert picks. And then check down in the description below where you can use our promo code GRIDIRON to go over to Bet Now and get a 50% sign-up bonus. The links for all of those things are in the description below, so do not miss out on any of this exclusive college football content. The season's almost over, and I promise you want to take advantage of this while you can. Today, guys, we are bringing you our game of the week, just like we've done all season long, and this is the game that I am very, very excited about. Number 10, Oklahoma, traveling to Waco to take on number 13, Baylor. Saturday night, college game day in town, a game that has major Big 12 title implications and major college football playoff implications. You truly can't ask for anything better. And I'll go on record right now and say that I think the College Football Playoff Committee is majorly disrespecting the Bears right now. I don't know what else they want out of Matt Rule and his team. They are the only undefeated team remaining in the Big 12 Conference, yet they are 3 spots below Oklahoma, a team that lost to Kansas State, a team that Baylor beat on the road by 19 points. I don't know what more they can ask for, but Baylor has a chance to gain their respect, to gain the attention of those who are doubting them by getting a signature win over Lincoln Riley and Jalen Hurts on Saturday night. So we're going to give you a little bit of history, break down the two sides of the ball for each team, give you the keys to the game, and share who we think will win this crucial Big 12 matchup. It should be noted that Oklahoma has not lost to Baylor since 2014. That was a 48-14 home loss for the Sooners in a year that Baylor finished the season at number 7 in the country. That was obviously the peak of Baylor football. Art Briles, you had Bryce Petty, you had such a potent passing attack. Baylor, year in and year out under Art Briles, was a college football playoff contender. We all know what happened shortly after that. But Oklahoma has won every game since, including a 49-41 win last time they visited Waco. And keep in mind, that was the year that Baylor went 1-11 in Matt Rule's first year at the helm. They've won those past 4 games over Baylor by an average of 18 points per game, and that also included last year's victory, a 66-33 win in Norman. Now, like I said, this is a big game across the board. Big game for Oklahoma to keep their playoff hopes alive. A big game for Baylor to do the same thing and to solidify themselves as the top dog in the Big 12 this season. Many people don't like Baylor. Many people are criticizing Baylor and doubting them because while they are undefeated, 4 of their 6 Big 12 wins have come by a combined 14 points. But 2 of those 6 Big 12 wins have come in dominating fashion against the best opponents they faced this season in Kansas State, which they won by 19 on the road, and then against Oklahoma State, who they also beat on the road by 18 points. To me, Baylor seems to be playing to the level of competition. While they have played the weaker opponents closer, when they have to face off against a better opponent, they rise to the occasion, and maybe they will do the same here on Saturday night. We're going to take a look at the offensive side of the ball where it's obvious that Oklahoma owns the quarterback edge. There's no doubt about it. Jalen Hurts simply is better than Charlie Brewer and is much more dominant than Charlie Brewer. Hurts has over 3,500 total yards this season, of course passing and rushing combined, 39 total touchdowns, and leads an offense that averages 48.4 points per game and averages nearly 600 yards per game. Oklahoma's offense has been nearly unstoppable. Even in their loss against Kansas State, which they lost 48-41, Jalen Hurts put up 491 total yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, one thing to keep in mind is that the Sooners did, in fact, lose their running back, Trey Sermon, for the year. Sermon had 385 yards, 4 touchdowns, and was averaging 7.1 yards per carry this season. But the beauty of it was, while you have Jalen Hurts, who can do it all, they had a 1-2 punch with Trey Sermon and Kennedy Brooks. So despite losing Sermon, they still have Brooks, who's averaging 8.2 yards per carry and has still been incorporated into this offense. So while they don't have that 1-2 punch at running back anymore, Brooks will kind of be the lead back. I think they will be just fine offensively. For Baylor, an offense that I don't think gets as much attention. Obviously not as much attention in the conference that they're in, but they still average 35.3 points per game behind a fairly balanced offense, passing and running, led by quarterback Charlie Brewer, who has over 2,300 yards, 16 touchdowns, and just 4 interceptions. It took him, I think, 5 or 6 weeks to throw his first interception. Of course, that coming in the game against Texas Tech. So Baylor and Brewer take extremely good care of the football. It's something that will be so crucial in a game like this when it comes to the turnover margin. The Bears are averaging 271 passing yards per game and 188.2 rushing yards per game. They've scored 30 points 5 times, at least 30 points 5 times this season. So when they want to turn it on, they can. And I mentioned that 188.2 rushing yards per game, and that's going to be very critical. Very, very critical, because Oklahoma is allowing 144.7 rushing yards per game this season. That's not a good mark. And that's a great thing if you're a Bears fan, because you know you can turn it on with the pass because you have one of the more experienced quarterbacks in the country with Charlie Brewer. And now you've got a rushing game that is averaging almost 200 a game going up against an OU defense that's giving up nearly $150 a game. So that's going to be huge, and defense in this game is going to be huge across the board. And Baylor's defense, everybody likes to look at their offense, but their defense has probably been the biggest reason why the Bears are undefeated right now. They're only allowing 19 points per game and 127.1 rushing yards per game. Not a bad mark at all. But the stat that stood out to me more than anything for Baylor is that they have forced, so far this season, 18 turnovers. They have forced 18 turnovers. And as of late, and we'll get to that in a minute, but as of late, Oklahoma has been a little more turnover prone than they usually are. Baylor does a very good job of holding on to the football. They do a phenomenal job of taking it away. And that's going to be crucial here to see if Oklahoma can learn to have a little bit of ball security, taking care of it in a hostile road environment. The one concern I have for Baylor defensively is the amount of passing yards they allow per game. They allow 210.3 passing yards per game, and that's obviously a concern with an Oklahoma offense led by Jalen Hurts. He's going to be extremely difficult to stop. He is extremely improved as a passer. That was something that during his time at Alabama, I think a lot of people criticized or had doubts. We knew he could run. We knew he was very good at dual threat, but his down-the-field throws were a bit of a concern. That is something that he, I think, has perfected and improved on greatly under Lincoln Riley, who, keep in mind, has produced the past 2 Heisman Trophy winners in Baker Mayfield and Kyler Murray. But I dog on Baylor's passing defense a little bit, but I have to say that Oklahoma truly is no better. They're allowing 25 points per game, so that's 6 more than Baylor. They're allowing 209.4 passing yards per game and 144.7 rushing yards per game, as we mentioned earlier. They allowed 48 points to Kansas State. They allowed 41 points to Iowa State. So the past 2 games, they've allowed over 40 points to their opponents. And while Kansas State and Iowa State are both quality teams, those are both teams that Baylor took care of this season. Iowa State by 2 after jumping out to a 20-0 lead. And then, of course, they beat Kansas State on the road by 19 earlier this season. It's a bit of a cause of concern for the Oklahoma defense. Reminds me a lot of what happened last year. They got into the college football playoff, and many criticized their defense as they were allowing over 30 points per game. A little bit better than that mark from 2018, but still a bit of a cause of concern. It's great if you can score, but you've got to be able to get stops as well. So, what are going to be the keys in this game? We mentioned the offense, we mentioned the defense, and you know how big I am when it comes to home field advantage. You know how big of a factor I think that plays. Sometimes for me, that determines whether I think a team will win or not. If I see 2 teams that I think are so dead even, whoever has home field advantage, I usually give the nod to because it can play that big a role. We'll start with Baylor, the home team here. The key for them, first off, has to be to keep Jalen Hurts contained. Keep him contain and bottle up. If you get pressure on him, that's great. But Jalen Hurts is a very experienced quarterback, one of the best in the country. He knows how to read a defense. He knows how to escape the pocket. He knows how to extend plays. Baylor cannot allow that. In the past 2 games for Oklahoma against Kansas State and Iowa State, they have done a fairly good job of taking care of Jalen Hurts in the running game. They have bottled him up when it comes down to running. Not as many yards, but he's still putting up touchdowns. So they've shortened the yardage, but he's still getting touchdowns out of it. Baylor needs to find a way to prevent both. Prevent yards rushing and prevent him from scoring touchdowns, whether that's from 10 yards out or from 30 yards out. The second thing for Baylor is to run the football. Run the football. And as we all know, if you run it enough, it will set up the pass against a weaker Oklahoma passing defense, as we mentioned, allowing nearly 210 passing yards per game. But that rushing defense is no better. Run the ball enough. Give Jonathan Lovett the ball. Give JaMycal Hasty the ball. They do a phenomenal job of getting those guys involved in the passing game, but get them more involved in the run game. We've seen them break out a few big ones here and there against the likes of Kansas State and Oklahoma State. Can they continue to do it against Oklahoma? And then finally, for Baylor, kind of a no-brainer here, win the turnover battle. Force the turnovers. We mentioned how great they are at doing that, forcing 18 already this season. Oklahoma, on the other hand, has committed 10 turnovers while only forcing 6. So Oklahoma's defense, we mentioned, has some struggles. They are not the best when it comes to creating turnovers. But as of late, they have turned the ball over quite a bit, including turning the ball over twice to Iowa State and twice to Kansas State. So that's 4 turnovers of their 10 in the past 2 games. I would expect that's something Lincoln Riley will address, something they will try to fix, but sometimes you can't go out there and play the game for your quarterbacks. You can't go out there and hold on to the ball for your running backs. Things happen, and I expect Baylor to do everything in their power to win this turnover battle. And that could end up being a difference maker in such a big game like this, especially if it becomes a shootout. Now the difference maker for Oklahoma, the keys for them if they want to come on the road and win, if they want to keep their playoff hopes alive. Apparently the committee likes them better than the Bears. They're sitting at number 10. And there's a very good chance that if Oklahoma runs the table, wins this game, finishes undefeated, and wins the Big 12 championship game, they could get in as that one-loss conference champion. Maybe even over the likes of Jalen Hurts' former team in Alabama, who might finish as a one-loss team, but will not win their conference championship. Oklahoma, their keys for the game are, of course, as we mentioned, take care of the football. Past 2 games, they've done a bad job of that. Last week against Iowa State, the only reason the Cyclones were still in that game so late is because Oklahoma turned the ball over twice in the 4th quarter. A fumble and an interception late. And I firmly believe that had Iowa State forced overtime and not gone for 2, the Cyclones would have won that game. Oklahoma got sloppy down the stretch, and they cannot afford that in a hostile environment. Last week, it was at home for the Sooners. This week, it's a completely different ballgame. So take care of the football. Don't allow Baylor to get some easy points and a good field position because of your mistakes. Second, put the hammer down when you're ahead. If Oklahoma jumps out to a 7-0 lead, 14-0 lead, even 10-0, put the hammer down. Don't stop. Score at will if possible. Because the past few weeks against, or especially last week I'll say, against Iowa State, they were up by 21 at 2 points in that game. And I'm not saying that Oklahoma just kind of gave up and was like, we've got this, but I don't think they were as aggressive as they could have been. They needed to put the hammer down and run away with that game. The committee likes seeing blowouts. The committee likes seeing teams that win big in their conference. Oklahoma was unable to do that against Iowa State. If the opportunity arises against Baylor, don't be afraid to put the nail in the coffin and end it early. Another thing for Oklahoma, force some quick 3-and-outs and tire that Baylor defense. Oklahoma has one of the best offenses in the country. On top of that, they have one of the most explosive offenses in the country. They can score on any play they want to. They have a lot of speed. They have a lot of talent. And if that Oklahoma defense comes out there and gets quick 3-and-outs against this Baylor offense, there's a very good chance that they're going to wear down that Baylor defense, whether or not Oklahoma goes on a long, methodical drive or whether or not they score on the first play from 80 yards out. They're either going to wear down the Baylor defense or they're going to make them lose their morale because they're giving up big play after big play. Force 3 and outs, go back on the field on offense, and keep Baylor's defense out there to wear them down. If you do that and Baylor's offense can't get much going, then it's going to be a very long night for Baylor. So in the end, what's going to happen? I think this game is extremely close. And once again, Vegas is not giving the Baylor Bears enough credit. The Bears are 10-point underdogs, despite being the lone undefeated team, despite being at home. They are 10-point underdogs to the Sooners. I don't agree with that at all. Not one bit. I don't agree with their ranking at all. Not one bit. But we talked about defense. We talked about what's going to need to happen in this game, turnover battle, and how great Baylor is at stealing the ball away from opponents. But in the end, it's actually going to be the Oklahoma defense that comes through clutch in a game like this. Oklahoma's defense gets a late turnover or a late stop in the fourth quarter and escapes with a win in Waco. I think it's the Sooners defense that steps up. I think they have a more explosive offense, more so than Baylor's, and I think maybe down 3, maybe down 7, maybe down 8. One possession game, Baylor has a chance to go win it or tie it, and it's Oklahoma that gets a key interception or a key stop on fourth down and escapes with this win to keep their playoff hopes alive. But remember, there's a very good chance this will not be the first meeting between these two squads this season. Oklahoma may win this game, and with this win, they may own the tiebreaker over Baylor. But there's a very good chance that the Sooners and the Bears could meet again in the Big 12 championship game with revenge on the line, much like Oklahoma did over their rival Texas just last season. Anything can happen in November. Anything can happen in conference championship games. So keep an eye out for this one. But I like Lincoln Riley and the Sooners to escape in Waco with a season-saving victory, and Baylor's undefeated season comes to an end. So guys, thank you for watching us here on YouTube. Make sure to go follow us on Twitter at Gridiron Expert. Check out the official website, thegridironexpert.com, and use that promo code GRIDIRON on BetNow to receive that 50% sign-up bonus. The links for all those things are in the description below, so do not miss out on that exclusive content. And once again, thank you for watching. Please continue to like, comment, and subscribe, and we'll see you next time on The Gridiron Expert.